Today I'm going to show you how to replace an upper control arm. Excuse me. I'm going to replace the whole upper control arm, considering that I didn't want to press in the new ball joint. So the reason why I figured I needed a new upper control arm and ball joint is because it's got a bit of play. Not a lot, but enough to replace it. I already replaced my tie rods 2 days ago, so I figured when I was under here I should check to see what else needs to be done. So anyway, pretty straightforward. You need a 10mm for these two bolts here that lets you get in there to where the ball joint is. You need a 16 for the ball joint nut, and you need a 17 for the two nuts here, one here and one here, for the two bolts that hold the upper control arm in place. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the cap here and loosen these two nuts up here so that I can get started. Okay, now you see the cap is off, so you can see the castle nut on the ball joint. And there's a little cotter pin here that needs to come out so that you can loosen this castle nut. And I backed these off, not all the way. I wanted to make sure there was still some room in there so that it doesn't just fall right out. And so anyway, you can probably get these off with your fingers. Sometimes you need a pair of pliers. Mine just popped right out. And then you'll use your 16mm here to pop this castle nut off. Oh, that's a 17. I guess the castle nut that came with the new assembly is a 16. So anyhow, I guess it's a 17mm. So you'll pop this off, get it loose, and I'll show you the next step. Okay, the castle nut's now off, and if you don't have a ball joint or a tie rod fork which goes in here and then spreads them apart by hitting it with a hammer, and if you don't have a ball joint press like I do, then you're going to have to do kind of an older method where you just hit here with a hammer. And so what I found is easy is right here on the upper control arm, put a piece of 2x4 there and put a jack down on the floor and just put a little bit of pressure up on the upper control arm. You know, not a whole heck of a lot, but just enough to give it some upward pressure so that when you hit this with your hammer, it pops free. So we got a piece of wood there with a jack, and it's just got a little bit of pressure pushed up on there, not a lot like I said. And now we're going to hit this here with a hammer and it should pop free. Sometimes people have success hitting here on the fork that goes down to your lower control arm, but since I'm replacing the ball joint, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to hit it here. I took a couple more whacks than I thought, but anyhow, it's separated. Ball joint, it's pretty shot. So anyway, be careful. Word of advice, your axle obviously is tied into this steel here, so you don't want it to let it fall out because your axle could come out, which wouldn't be good. So anyhow, make sure this kind of stays where it is, and I'll show you the rest. You're gonna basically take this out, take off the two nuts that you loosened up here, and take out this upper control arm, and then grab your replacement here and get it into place. It's always good to check to see that it's the right one, of course, so just make sure before you start that it's for the right side. Anyway, I would also recommend on your new upper control arm to tighten these bolts here prior to installation, because when you get it up in there, you don't really have much room up where the shock tower goes to tighten them up. I mean, there is room, but it's just easier to tighten them when it's not installed. Now, installation is reversed. Basically, once you have your old outer control arm off, you put the new one on and go ahead and put the two bolts on that I was talking about here. Nuts, and tighten those down. And then we'll go to installing the ball joint. The ball joint does have a torque spec. It's over 40 pounds, I believe. I don't have a torque wrench, so I'm going to tighten it down past where the castle nut locks in so that you can see the hole where the cotter pin goes. So if you have a torque wrench, just Google it, look up 1992 Accord upper ball joint torque spec, and you'll be able to find it. Once you've got the upper control arm bolted into place up here, it's time to put on the ball joint. So you'll pull this over and push that down, push the ball joint down into the receiver there, and then tighten up the castle nut. Put the cotter pin in, put the guard back on that goes over the ball joint castle nut and cotter pin, and that's it.